Welcome to TradeTheNBI.com. This is John. This report is for the 6th of May. Well, we continue to hover right around this ABM yellow line right there, and we had it before 41.62 and a quarter. Still maintaining itself, so we're just in a sideways push as we ease off what was pretty extreme readings, just modifying them to the point where you're seeing short-term buyers picking back up here. We've been in the DOC spread, which recognized the weakness, and certainly we've seen it, but it's been modest at best. And of course, the best time to have weakness right around this time period, because we always talk about it anywhere from the 4th to the 5th of the month, is when new fund money starts flowing in. And when we had that big dip, that's when they started buying that. And we're seeing the start of that. Of course, now with this weakness, it's been trading off intraday. And like we said, for the NASDAQ, weaker than the S&P, and still continuing to show softness within the decline right here. So that's where it's been a drag on the S&P from moving any higher. Just part of the cycle. Gold, it's just creeping up a little bit at a time as more people debate this issue of transitory inflation versus permanent. I think it's pretty likely to guesstimate that with the supply restrictions that occurred from COVID and still not being out of it from a lot of places, there's just going to be disruptions for some time, and I think that's just going to continue to lead to gold inching higher, as well as the dollar devaluation that may fluctuate a little bit, but in general I think it's a pretty safe bet, which is why we've seen the market move where it is, because as we talked about before, it's not about earnings ratios and that, it's about the multiples, simply because if your expectation is the dollar is devalued, those assets, particularly ones in foreign countries and that, in different currencies, are actually worth more, relatively speaking. So it actually increases the overall value of the index because the purchasing power of the dollar is declining, and that's why the euro is, well, where it is, given the fact the Eurozone really isn't on par with where U.S. activity is even at this point. So if we look at it from our intraday, we had been on this continuation, kept moving, but we created a lot of positive extremes within that, and because of that, started filling it. Now you'll notice here that I sent everyone out the green dots, which are a little bit earlier sell at peaks. You'll notice you don't see them over here, and that's just because of the exclusion of when the shakeout is over at 15. Doesn't give that. You can still see the same setup readings where we have the magenta below, yellow, and then you have the blue fading below the gray line right there, and particularly when white moves back above that 13. That's a test setup that I'm working now that will allow us to make determinations at these peak moves where you've had an expressed period of power that has put us in a what some people call overbought. I just call it an extended run situation, and knowing when to get those out. Of course, we have the default setup stop after that, and of course even the ABM works just fine utilizing the same technique. But when it did come through, just traded across for a while, but then broke down significantly when we had both the magenta and the green. They're always coming simultaneous to each other. Sometimes the green will be a little bit ahead, and that led to some decent breakdowns. And then we got some soft buys. We weren't able to gain any traction. In this particular case, working now to set up the stop parameters for the individual buy candles, so that you don't get these little stop outs where you'd still be within it and you're still looking at decent DOC, like rising in this particular case, red still higher, and then the dip. Of course, it did catch that buy configuration and drove it right back up to the highs. Then it was just some bouncing back and forth with mostly weakness within a lot of these readings as we came across, and when we started the next cycle of green dots, we ended up lower, and then we just kind of based for a while within this configuration, and that led to little post-market buy configurations that sold off. Now we've produced a series of new positive extremes, all the way down to the low of 61, with our spike up here all the way up to 74. And this is the, I don't know if I can get it to go on the right candle, Paint 2A. Now the one that I finally got to produce the matching dark red trend run with it is been produced. I've got to make some adjustments within it for like a situation like this where you have a buy and you're just in consolidation. You're not making any new lows or anything like that. This is one of those that you get the same configuration, whether this is green up at the top or red, really kind of irrelevant. It's just a sideways action in either direction is going to be fine as long as you're in the right spot. You get low, a little bit of a pop, back and forth. So we can have those change on a constant basis, and that really depends on how active you want to be. You can see the turnaround configuration here. Leads to a few points, travels across, and then you get the bigger breakdown. Likewise here, the early buy and then secondary P2 pivot. If we turn those on, which certainly if you have program setup, you can just activate the P pivots, which is based off red DOC. But there'll be additional ones that I've created. The one you see here is on the pink, that's coming off of yellow pivots within the MBI reading. And then where it produces a dark pattern run, it should have converted to the buy setup that was right here from that. If you look at the setup. So I'm still working with this C version, and when it gets all worked out, I'll be able to convert it back into just the, well, it'll become a new MBI paint bar. So that will be the name once all these little details are worked out and finalized. But overall, it's looking pretty strong. But for now, utilizing the 2A, excellent from its overall readings and working quite nicely, actually. So pretty effective. As always, though, I will continue to update you on the Skype chat and continue to post updates. As always, though, if I have any other changes to the dots and that, I will add them, and I can set up that update, which now you have is the ratio hop show me study. So that just works out. I included for you the yellow, the dark brown, and the red dots, so that you get a general idea when we're looking at those oversold conditions, and then of course the conversions when the turnaround happens. There you have it. As always, though, trade well. We'll talk to you later.